Nice Jewish boy doesn't come into it at all. I mean, after all, we were all Englishmen.
But the war had its toll. Bomber Command squadrons lost over 8,000 aeroplanes. Over 50,000 airmen were killed. But Leslie Temple survived 30 missions.
The German radar had picked us up, and as we dropped our bombs, the flak over the target was tremendous. 2 engines caught fire. We could hear the shrapnel coming through the aircraft, and obviously it was everyone's hope that the shrapnel wouldn't hit them.
As early as August 1940, Britain was being bombed into submission. The Nazis were winning the war. The fate of the nation relied on the Battle of Britain. The Royal Air Force, which included 50 brave Jewish citizens, dared fight off the invaders. Britain lost 792 aeroplanes, but victory was secure.
Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few.
Behind Nazi lines, many British Jews performed audacious clandestine raids. Muriel Bick, codenamed Violette, and Denise Bloch, codenamed Ambrose, risked their lives spying on Nazi troop activities and sending covert information to London. British Jews aided the resistance movements, blew up enemy installations, and in Operation Freshman helped destroy Hitler's nuclear bomb-making ambitions in Norway. Muriel and Denise were betrayed and sent to die at the Ravensbrück death camp for women. Britons, whether Christian or Jewish, suffered as prisoners of war.
We were all rounded up, and an elegant German officer came out, and his first words, and perfectly true, first words he said, "Gentlemen, for you the war is over."
At Colditz, the infamous prison camp, 40 of the prisoners of war were British Jews. They were especially ill-treated because of their faith. They were beaten and subject to mock executions, but some managed to escape. Back at the front line, 6,000 Jewish men were formed into the Jewish Infantry Brigade. At the River Senio in Italy, they fixed bayonets and fearlessly charged the German lines. Their distinguished victory spearheaded the Allied advance on southern Europe. With huge relief, they celebrated the Passover at the battlefield, commemorating the Jewish exodus from 400 years of slavery in Egypt. Military rations of matzah were distributed, along with hot chicken soup and knaddles. The Merchant Navy was also an integral part of the war effort, ensuring Britain had supplies to beat the Germans.
It's very satisfying to know that we brought back a load of 7,000 tons of prime Argentine beef in a country that needed every piece of food it could get. And that was the Merchant Navy's job, you see, and we did it.
The constant threat of German planes and U-boats made crossing the Atlantic a perilous exercise.
We were torpedoed just southwest of Iceland. There were explosions, there were ships burning. We had a destroyer, and they were dashing about, twisting and turning and dropping depth charges. God help the men in the water, but still, some made it. Shipping losses were so severe in what the German U-boats called their happy times. So severe that Churchill ordered a complete censorship on the Battle of the Atlantic. Otherwise, 3 times a week or 4 times a week, there'd be another headline, another convoy slaughtered.
The war effort was also assisted by Jewish refugees. Having escaped the Germans, they were put into British prisons, suspected of being the enemy. When freed, 4,000 enlisted in the alien pioneer companies and were transferred to first-class fighting battalions to become commandos and paratroopers, like X-Troop or No. 3 Troop 10 Commando. 79 of these British Jews spearheaded the D-Day Normandy invasion to liberate Europe from Nazi occupation.
We were young. I mean, I was 19 when I went in. You just didn't think about it. You saw death all round you, as I did. I saw many of my colleagues died. I wouldn't say I wasn't frightened at all. I was. And I confess that on many occasions when I was up in my aeroplane, I said, Shema Yisrael. But,
so did I.
Very well.
200 Jewish paratroopers and glider pilots helped lead the way at the Battle of Arnhem.
Arnhem was over Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. The crossing of the River Rhine was over Pesach. And leave was always stopped.
At Arnhem, we lost a third of the squadron. Well, it was a shambles because we could see our planes being shot down. There was no fighter escort for us because they were grounded in near Brussels because of bad weather. So the German fighters shot the merry hell out of us.
Monte Cassino was the worst time. The Battle of Monte Cassino. And seeing so many dead people. And 4 divisions were wiped out. It was almost as many as were killed in the rest of the war.
I was standing next to a man just talking to him, and a mortar shell landed at our feet. And his body was completely reversed from the waist. His body was facing backwards.
There's a guy, friend of mine, in the front, holding the front of the stretcher, and I'm black, I'm holding the back of the stretcher. As you're walking in the field, he steps onto a mine, he goes up in the air, one leg goes off, and I get the blast again. And he's shouting out, help me, help me, help me. What do I do? It's pitch black, I'm laying there, I'm in the minefield, I don't know what to do. This guy, I have to leave, I can't slap him on my shoulder, he's dead. The Germans were lobbing the shells at our British soldiers and wounding them and killing them. All day, all night, we were slapping soldiers away. It was a bloodbath.
We suddenly discovered that the Germans didn't realize that we were coming in. And we were sitting on top of them. They were down in the cellars, and we were up on the first floor, on the ground floor. And they suddenly appeared, and grenades started to fly, you know, pistols, rifles. Things got quite hectic for a time.
I had the misfortune to be with one of the first units to enter Belsen, a concentration camp. And that really was a horrendous experience. Spent 2 days there and saw things that I can never forget. Still think about, you know, to this day.
For her beliefs, Anne Frank had been killed here, with tens of thousands of others.
You can't forget the horrors. The only thing I'm forgetting now is the terrible smell of the thousands of bodies. You know, when you go to a funeral and things, it's unpleasant. But thousands of bodies. It was a smell, it was a terrible smell.
Overwhelmed by emotion, Reverend Hardman held a religious Thanksgiving service with the survivors to celebrate the liberation of the death camp. Even children joined in. This was the first open Jewish ceremony in Germany for several years.
Am Yisrael Chai, the children of Israel still liveth.
A few children particularly affected me, and I'm not ashamed to say that I had tears in my eyes, as did most of our troops when we went in there.
British troops, led by the late Reverend Harry Levy, went well beyond the call of duty to bring humanitarian aid to the survivors.
If we had any doubt whatsoever as to why we were fighting this war, they were dispelled when we walked into Belsen. There's no question about that.